So this one, Sean, is David Galley. David Galley, Gallie. David Galley. 1, 2,
Sorry,
3,
Barry.
4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. David Galley. You want to try switching it off as well, Sean? See if it's. I'm trying to get you to do two things at once there, Anna. Sorry about that.
How do you spell Galley?
G-A-L-L-I-E.
Oh, that hasn't worked. 2 secs, Chippy.
Yeah, no worries. Right, Tina. Let's switch this one off, Sean.
Sorry, just having a look at this software.
Sean, we don't have to put the names in it. Don't worry. We'll just go round.
Okay, ready?
Have you got that one, Sean?
Sorry, which was it?
David Galley. Gallie. I mean, you don't have to put his full name, but I mean, if it helps, put his first name or whatever. But I just like might help you.
It's just a matter of getting used to this,
Yeah.
configuring it. David. Galley. See, I'm doing it wrong.
Are you putting that in, Charlie?
I don't seem to be able to
Don't worry.
rename it, to be honest.
Don't worry about it. Let's just check them all then. So switch this one on off then, Sean.
Okay.
And back on again. This is David Galley's one. Okay, lovely. This is Karen Welsh. Karen Welsh. So just try and switch it off for us.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll switch it back on again. Try again.
Don't know why that doesn't work.
But this is David Isling's one.
Yep.
Just try it again.
Try
1, 2,
renaming
3,
it.
4.
Oops.
And switch it off, Sean. Sean, can you switch it off?
Sorry about it.
Then we have Ellie Baker, Sean. Ellie Baker.
Yep.
I'll switch it back on.
There's a bit of a lag turning it off. It's weird. You turn it off, Chippy. I can't hear you.
Yeah, lovely. Well done, Sean. Switch it back off. This is Krupesh Hirani's microphone.
Yep,
Switch
got
it
it.
off. I'll switch it back on again, and you can do this.
Yeah, it was a bit.
This is the clerk, Paul Goodchild's microphone. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Switch it off. I'll switch it back on again. There we go. And the chair of this committee is Susan Hall. Susan Hall. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lovely. Thanks, Sean.
Bear with Chippy.
2-2. turn my microphone on, wouldn't it? I'm just right. Can I welcome members, officers, and the public here in the back of the room or watching on the webcast to today's meeting of the Audit Panel. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched off or to silent mode to avoid any unnecessary interruptions this morning. Can I start by asking our clerk, Paul Goodchild, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence from Assembly Member Duval, and Assembly Member Baker is attending as substitute.
Thank you. Can I ask the panel to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interests to declare? I'll take that as a no.
Chair, so in the previous item we had apologies from Assembly Member Clark as well.
No? We'll go through that with you in a while. Okay. Can I ask the panel to confirm the meetings of the meeting held on 14th, the minutes, I should say, of the meeting held on the 14th of October 2021 to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. Can I ask members to note the ongoing actions arising from the previous meetings of the audit panel? Thank you. Right, now we move on to our main item of business, which is to review the internal audit reports. The panel will see that appendices 2 to 6 to this item concerning adult education budget funding assurance reviews have been provided to members only and has been reserved from publication. Now, should members wish to discuss the content of these reviews, we will need to resolve to exclude the press and the public from the meeting. And I would suggest that we do so at the end of the meeting. Does anybody here wish to discuss any of the exempt items? No. Okay. Anne-Marie, you're here on as the officer involved in that. I have got a couple of questions, but I'm more than happy to put them in writing to you, if that's all right. And then we needn't go into a part 2 here. Okay?
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the panel to confirm that pursuant to Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the information set out at Agenda Item 5 Appendices 2 to 6 should be excluded from publication on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by paragraph 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and it is considered that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, and also to note the information set out. Okay, can I ask David Esling, Head of Audit Assurance and Risk Management at MOPAC, to introduce each non-exempt report, and then I will ask relevant officers to expand further.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The first report we have is the network infrastructure, and this is an advisory review that we undertake. Just to highlight that we undertake risk and assurance reviews and also advisory work in circumstances where it's a fast-moving case or introduction of a project or something. So we work with the team to provide audit control advice and risk advice, and this is the nature of this review. So just to highlight, this covers the plans from the move out of the current City Hall to the new City Hall. So looking at the aims and objectives, that they were clearly defined and that appropriate resources have been deployed. So that was one of the first elements that we looked into as part of the review. I'd like to then take you to section 3, which is on page 26, and as you can see, this sort of highlights that the project resourcing requirements are clearly defined, and there's a chart that is updated regularly on that. But we do recognise, and as part of the reason for this review, there are very, very tight timescales. There was some slippage that has occurred, and to manage the resources effectively, project plans need to be linked directly to resourcing plans. But these were put to the team, and those are being introduced. And I know that David's on the call and will take any questions on this. Another piece I'd like to just highlight is in section 4, and what we identified here is really consideration should be given to reviewing and updating, when required, the topography. So that's the way that the network's pulled together once the new structure and the sites are up and fully operational. However, the documentation did indicate that the new network is robust, so that's a very positive. And it has 2 data centres which will operate in sync with each other to provide resilience and backup arrangements. And those are key elements that we would expect in any move and any new network being implemented. Just another key bit I'd like to just highlight is in 5.4, which is on page 27. And this was to look at the network has sufficient capacity. Obviously, with the move, and those who are have inputting into the network, the capacity is of a nature that would be able to withhold that. So the network is being revised, and what we're saying is it should be advisable to check the ability to deal with the increased numbers users accessing the network remotely. And this is all part of the new restructured hybrid working environment. So obviously there's going to be a lot more accessibility to the network. Just a couple more sort of bits I wish to highlight. Moving to 6.4. From the discussions with the team, we identified that the network cabling at the current City Hall is to be left behind. We've just raised the point there whether that should, whether there's any possibility of getting some money back, to put it colloquially, on that cabling. And then section 7, this is to look at the security of the network, and this is touching on the firewalls, and looking at the firewalls are managed by a company called RedCentric, and this is a leading UK managed service provider, and they will help to ensure that the security of the network is managed effectively. And I think that's another key aspect that we need to sort of raise here, that they are using an appropriate company to ensure that the network is appropriately secured. And finally, sort of section 8, David probably can update this because we raised the point about the recovery arrangements from the 3rd and 7th December. So obviously that ends today. So I haven't heard any issues with that. So I'm guessing that's all on the backup side of things worked okay with the downtime of the move over. But that's sort of everything from me. Willing to take questions, but I know that David Munn is on the call to take specifics as well from Assembly members.
Yes, he did. I did have notice that Assembly Member Hirani wanted to ask some questions.
Thank you, Chair. I think part of it actually you addressed in the bits that you were highlighting. My question was in particular to do with 6.4 and the cabling at the current City Hall. So what is the process in terms of yourself having those negotiations with the owner of the building?
David.
Apologies. Those negotiations are being undertaken by our colleagues in facilities management. So my team, the technology team, aren't party to that, I'm afraid.
Chairman, if I could help here. Our head of FM, Simon Grinter, is a very entrepreneurial guy, and he's already generating some small but not unimportant income by us looking to sell where we can assets that we no longer need and are still in City Hall. So you may be aware on some of the equipment, the desks, the hot boxes have actually been sold. So we are exploring the extent to which we could potentially get some income from the cabling. I'm happy to report back to the panel about the progress on that.
That would be very helpful, thank you. Yes, he was in my office eyeing up the fridge, so I think he has got his eyes on absolutely everything. But I do know that cabling would probably bring a lot more money than my cranky old fridge, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Was there anything else? Anybody else for... Okay, you talked about, David, you were talking about a date that something should be done for by today. Can you just remind me what that is, and then we'll get confirmation from David Munn, I'm sure, that it's been done. Sorry.
So this was to do with the move. So let me. Sorry, I'm telling you that.
No, that's all right. When anybody mentions the move, we expect the worst, quite frankly.
Sorry. Thank you. Right. Okay. So yes, this is the backup recovery arrangements.
That's it.
And what you would normally have is regular incremental backups
Yep.
that are undertaken. So obviously the move out over the weekend from obviously the current City Hall, or past City Hall now, to new City Hall was taking place over the 3rd and 7th December. So those particular backups were not going to take place, but are going down during that period. So the maximum loss of data potentially would have only been 3 days. As I say, David can probably tell you exactly what if that
him.
actually heard,
Yeah.
but it was all to do with the data loss. So and we were just highlighting the 3 days. So the risk was minimal. However, if that did occur, then it would cause probably inconvenience more than a drastic loss of data.
Yes, but we don't like inconvenience, Mr. Munn.
Apologies, I lost connection at the start of there, which meant I missed the start. But I think I've got the gist of it. So just to sort of like give a full picture of this, obviously we've got an awful lot of complex stuff that we're trying to do in a short period of time. But obviously what we're trying to do is mitigate as much risk as we can do as we go through all of these changes. Now, just to be clear, at the moment, so what we have done, obviously, recently is we've moved from having the data centre, which we used to have in the basement of the old City Hall, which used to back up stuff back to this other data centre, which was run by TfL. Now, tomorrow, our new data centre comes online, and we will be backing up from data centre 1 in TfL to data centre 2. Now, it does mean that there's a 3-day period where we aren't backing up between 2 sites because we've just closed down City Hall. However, what we're talking about here isn't all of our data. We're talking about the data that relates to specialist applications that are run by the GLA and some documents. Most of the stuff that is on that the GLA backs up, so an awful lot of that is on the cloud. So, for example, emails, calendar entries, the documents which people store in their OneDrive and on their team sites and in SharePoint are all stored in the cloud. So none of them are impacted by the lack of backup over the last 3 days. And what we're talking about is within a large state-of-the-art data center, rather than backing up to a separate building, we're backing up for those 3 days to an alternative part of that TfL data center. So we'd be talking about an absolutely catastrophic failure if we were in a position where that were to happen, because it would mean the complete write-off of the whole of that TfL data center for us to have a problem there. So our view is that this is relatively low risk. If we were to lose all of that data, we still have backups that go back 3 days ago. So the worst we would be talking about would be if somebody had created a document that had needed to be stored in that data center in the last 3 days, and then we'd had a catastrophic failure, then that document would be lost. But other than that, all of our key documents or whatever prior to those 3 days ago would be safe. So
Okay, so you're not worried at all then?
It's a calculated risk. As I say, it's not that we're not doing backups at all. We are doing backups within that large data center. So if there was for example, a failure of the equipment that was hosting.
Oh, the IT. Yes. Mr. Munn, if you can hear me, we can't hear you. Mr. Munn. Yes. We lost you completely. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
No,
Apologies. Sorry.
we lost you completely.
Oh,
The joys of our IT system. Who is in charge of the IT system?
well, of course
Is
it's
that
me.
you?
And that, is
Yes.
that irony isn't lost on me.
Perhaps you should have come in and then we couldn't have put you in this position, you
Oh
see.
no, apologies. I would love to be in. Unfortunately, I'm not able to travel. I'm
No,
afraid.
fair enough. Fair enough. We understand and we'll put up with it. Has anybody else got any more questions on this section? No. And we're just noting, aren't we, Karen, the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Plan. We're just noting that. Happy with that, colleagues? Joy. Appendix 8 was withdrawn because of an officer off sick, but we'll get that, won't we, for the next?
Yes, Chair, that's in draft, and unfortunately, yeah, due to sickness, we haven't been able to complete that, but that will come to the next panel.
Okay, all right then. Just one other thing from the, no, we're on to the internal audit progress report. Are you saying any more about that?
No, Chair, I think it's just as written,
Okay.
just to highlight that there are two, as I've just stated. One is the cloud computing governance review that's currently at draft, and also the security and records management at draft. And that also lists the reviews that we will be bringing to the March 2022 audit panel, which looks like it's going to be quite busy.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's all right. I think it's only you and I that like audit, but there we go. Then if I could just ask, have the adult education budget audits flagged any wider concerns with fraud within the £300 million AEB, which the Mayor holds?
So from our perspective, is that touching on the reviews? No, they're highlighted. There's a couple of issues with, but you know, as a major impact on that, the answers, you know, we haven't identified any significant fraud, or material, to that. However, there are, as in the counter fraud bit there, we've got some legacy AEB providers, and this was referrals to do with subcontracting aspects of those reviews. But that you know, we've reported on those previous panels, and we are in the process of drawing a line under those.
Okay, well,
Chairman,
it's something to keep an eye on.
if I could add to that,
Yes.
because the issues raised about subcontracting, I think, are ones that, as David says, have been resolved. But we've asked them to do some additional work as part of their normal audit plan to make sure that there are no stone unturned around subcontracting, because I think there are, from the two frauds that we've had worked and done, I think there raises some issues that I'd like to ensure that we don't have any wider problems in our contractors' use of subcontractors. So yes, everything looks good at the moment. However, I just want to ensure we can follow through on that.
Good. I'm pleased to hear this. It's £300 million budget, taxpayers' money. We want to make sure that we're certainly not suffering any more fraud on that. And if we do find it, then we'll have to really do a deep dive, won't we?
Yes, obviously, if we do find any fraud, then that goes through our fraud processes. And I think the two investigations that we've done show that we have, you know, thorough processes to explore that. But as I said, I think we just need to ensure that we don't leave any stone unturned. And I, you know, still remain concerned that we get to the bottom of the issues, if there are any.
Okay. Has the audit plan been impacted at all by the delays to the City Hall's relocation?
No, no, Chair. From our perspective, we've been able to continue work as we have done throughout the pandemic. So we've been able to still meet with officers, albeit online, and it hasn't impacted other than with some examples of sickness. But we've been able to continue and complete our work, and as we highlighted in the report there, we expect to complete the audit plan by March, and those reports will be coming to the will either be completed to draft or will be completed finally to the March audit panel.
Okay, lovely.
Just touching on David's point, yes, we've had that discussion, and those those aspects of the A/B review that we'll be undertaking on the contractors and subcontractor point is very much the focus of those reviews.
Yeah, good, good. I was going to thank Mr. Munn, but I think he's gone. You can thank him for us for attending. Can we note the internal audit reports, colleagues, attached to the report? Thank you very much. So we're going to move on now to the corporate risk register. I think David Galley is going to talk us through this.
Chairman, as in previous meetings, you've asked that our risk register be put on each of your panel agendas, and so we've put this back on. You recall I had a conversation last time where I presented, the new corporate risk register and all the thinking behind that. What you have is again exactly what you had last time. We are progressing with the deep dives as we set out in the report earlier. This is the basis on which we will be working with both external and internal audit to develop our audit plans for the future. So it's a very important document. And as last time, very welcome to hear your views and comments about the register. We want it very much to reflect the whole of the GLE's perception of risks of both the Mayor's side and the Assembly's side, so it can really pick up all the issues that we need to ensure are addressed.
Yeah, I don't really think you do want to hear my views again. You know how unhappy I am with the way this is being done now. I think following some of the money in some of these departments is almost impossible. But we're doing our best, and we will continue to do our best. I've got some questions. Does anybody else have questions? Shall I start? Let's start with the crystal, why not? It was trending down as a risk. But we were all promised faithfully we'd be in there before Christmas, and here we are. So do we think that City Hall relocation is still a downward risk, or should it feature higher up as an issue?
I mean, what I'd say, it is, the Chief Officer's major preoccupation. It's obviously an absolutely critical change. It is unfortunate that we are no longer at old or new City Hall. We have the temporary arrangements here. This obviously wasn't part of the plan. We are virtually at the point of the move taking place in January. I think Mary's going to announce shortly the exact time frame for that. So in many ways, this is a kind of historic position on the register rather than, the position which is dynamic and hopefully will be concluded very shortly.
I thought she had told us when we were going, definitely.
I may be behind the loop on exactly what's been said, but, I understand it's obviously going to happen imminently.
Well, we'll see, won't we? We were told definitely, for sure, before Christmas, but there we go. We all said no, it won't happen. How will you ensure that no risks are left behind when moving from the old setup to the new one, in talking of audit and the way you now do these books?
Chairman, you recall that we did discuss this last time, and so in the detailed paper you had last time, we set out a note of exactly where the previous risks have been located. So some have been subsumed into the new risks, some we've judged actually can fall off, and some we will be looking at other arrangements, in particular this structure I outlined last time where we have a strategic risk, but that doesn't mean that risks under that are lost. Indeed, there's actually a process we put in place to ensure that risks that we still maintain are present are then managed under the umbrella of the strategic risk.
Okay. I've got lots of issues, but Assembly Member Fortune.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Can you help me understand risk 3 and risk 4, which seem related because they're both workforce related? And the reason I ask, I have to put my bins back on, is that risk 3 talks about having capable, skilled, engaged, motivated workforce, and that's stable. And then risk 4 talks about having effective staff or the right staff around equality, diversity and inclusion to deliver effectively for London, and that risk is going up. So we've got a stable workforce and a risk with the workforce that's increasing. How do they balance those two?
Peter, it's a very, very good question. It's one that the management team wrestled with about whether we should actually disentangle the two risks, because in many ways, as you've implied, they are intimately interrelated. How can we have an appropriate workforce without it addressing EDI properly? So it was one that we felt it was sufficiently important to have both. Although, as you point out, then there is that discrepancy in trajectory. But I think that's a perfectly natural outcome by disentangling the two. But I think in terms of managing, then we have to see them as completely related.
So because that's going to be, we're going to have to understand this data in relation to the move as well, because we want to understand if that's had any impact. And I know that's something that the chairman and colleagues are interested in. So we're going to have to look at the way we measure these different elements.
Okay, something to take forward, I'm sure. Anybody else? Yes.
Is that working? Yeah. I just wanted to ask about the risks that are, I'm assuming these are still in red. Most of them are the financial ones, but risk 3 around workforce is still red even after the control measures. And I'm just wondering, that seems quite a standout for me that would be so serious. Are you concerned about that? Is there more that could be done around that?
Yes, but I think it's important that we report as we honestly see the risks to you, and as we, as a management team, will look to address them. So risks we're facing financially are endemic. They are really very, very critical ones, which could have huge impacts upon the authority. And similarly, as picking up Peter's question, similarly the issues around our workforce and diversity are again ones that are very, very serious risks, which we need to take very seriously and ensure that we can manage those appropriately.
I suppose my question is, yes, I understand the financial risks, but presumably there are more levers that could be pulled in terms of, or more levers could be used in terms of workforce, and I'm just wondering why those aren't managing the risks down as much as maybe we'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our own workforce is more under our control than resources that ultimately come from government decisions. But clearly we need to watch, as we discussed before, particularly the impact of the move to the new City Hall and the potential impact that has on recruitment and retention. It's obviously an important issue. Ensuring that we have a workforce that is not only reflects London, but also reflects, in terms of the ethnic diversity, the right proportionate levels of salaries is also important. And we are not there yet on certainly the latter. So there's more work to be done. It's clearly an issue that we as a management team take very, very seriously. It's obviously a huge priority for the mayor. There's a lot more work to be done there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I can't see anybody else indicating, so can I ask the panel to note the appended corporate risk register and identify any points it wishes to consider ahead of its next update? Yes, thank you. We're now on to public sector audit appointments. David Galley, do you want to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a very important decision that the Mayor and the Assembly need to make by March of next year to appoint our external auditor. And so the report sets out the process that we need to follow. And the purpose of putting the report here is to gain the panel's views before we look to put a decision jointly to the Mayor and the Assembly. We have a choice around whether we fall into the PSAA framework, which is where we are at the present, which essentially where we delegate to a national agency the appointment of our external auditor, or whether we try and pursue our own process or process with others.
No, you suddenly disappeared there, and yet your little red light's still on. Maybe just move it closer to you, David.
Might be worth turning it off and on again.
Steve is running to assist us. Oh, there we go. If you use the... That's it. We're swapping microphones, Steve. Thank you.
Okay. So, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's great.
So we have a choice between whether we adopt the PSAA framework or not. Now, there's been a lot of discussions across London, not only with borough chief finance officers that I've been party to, but also across the GLA group with TfL and the Met in particular, about whether it is practical as an option for us to opt out. And the conclusion, I think, reluctantly we has made across London is that actually, although the City Corporation are making their own decision to opt out, in practice for the rest of London, on balance, we feel it's best to opt in. So you'll find, equivalent reports being made across your boroughs and across the group to look to opt into the process. And there's some very good reasons why we should opt in. I mean, to opt out would lead to all sorts of additional work pressures, the whole appointments process. We have to essentially appoint a completely independent panel to do that. And there obviously are economies of scale and synergies by working nationally using the national framework. And I think it's important to distinguish between the problems that we have had and discussed here before on external audit, where, as you know, Chairman, EY have not completed audit on time. And I think the real central problem, I don't think, is whether we opt in or opt out. It is that nationally, the requirements from the FRC about what audits need to take place are imposing increasing burdens on external audit. So that means it's taking longer, it's more costly. But at the same time, the companies who have put themselves forward are not making the money that they have anticipated. So increasingly, they are reluctant to support the marketplace. So there's a real tension, and it may well be once the PSA conclude their processes that actually there'll be less external audit resource around nationally. So, there are arguments about why we should look to consider opting in. But on balance, the view that I've reached is it's in our interest to opt into PSAA. But obviously, we're looking to consult you here as a panel and subject to your thoughts and comments and other soundings that you may or may not want us to make. Happy then to take forward a decision that would be jointly to be made by the Mayor and the Assembly in the new year, so that we can make our decision by the deadline of 11th of March next year.
Thank you. If we opt in, can we deal with this lateness? Because I seem to have been arguing with them for the last couple of years over this.
And I wish I could give you that assurance. Now, obviously, we had an improved performance in last audit, where EY were about 6 days late compared with being almost 3 months late in the audit process. And as we discussed before, that has been down to our external auditor, not the GLA. I do worry that with, as I say, a likely retrenchment of the resource and an increasing divergence between the regulator, who is setting increasing requirements upon external audit to do more and more things, which is right and proper given the importance, but that being then making it harder for the companies to deliver on time and also to deliver on budget. And I think there's a real issue. It's one of the things that particularly the Treasurers' Societies have made very strong representations to, not only to PSAA, but also to the FRC and into DULAC, the government department responsible, where there is, I think, a developing crisis point. Now, we've been fortunate that our audit has been completed very, very close to the statutory timeline. But my colleagues across London and across nationally, the number of audits that actually completed on time compared with when authorities actually completed their draft accounts, it's quite astonishing. There was figures of sort of 90%, I think, was the figure at the time of the statutory deadline of 30th of September, where the external audit companies across this country had not completed their audit process. So there's a real developing problem.
Well, that is astonishing. I suppose there's nothing we can do until it happens and we can see, but it is of concern. I was appalled that they were 3 months late. I wasn't happy they were 6 days late. I didn't realise I should be grateful it was only 6 days late. But okay, well, I agree with what you're saying at the moment, but I do think we should maintain our ability to have a go and make sure things come in on time. I'm sure all my colleagues would agree with that. Okay.
Chairman, perhaps if I can add, one of the things we will obviously anticipate EY coming to your next panel in the new year, and I think it would be important to stress that comment to them, because obviously at that point we would not have made our decision. But I'll, subject to kind of views or anything you might want to send back to me, or more widely within the Assembly, I'll look to take forward the joint decision from the Mayor and the Assembly, if that's appropriate.
Well, definitely that. My colleague.
Just very quickly, otherwise I'll feel guilty if I don't ask, is that the strong recommendation from across the capital seems to be to opt in. But what were the risk factors that you considered with that?
I think there was a view that if London had actually been able to organise itself to opt out, that may have actually got us a better deal. In many ways, London is a much more attractive proposition for the external audit companies. It's much easier to audit London than it is to audit Cumbria or Wales, for instance, in just sort of geographical dispersal. So there's a sense in which we may have got a better deal in terms of value for money or resource being available, which was sort of one of the drivers. But I think it was the ability to procure on time, the burden it would take place, but also about who would join in. So, there was a lot of work we did in Society of London Treasurers to work through that. There was a subgroup I was on to look at the pros and cons, and similarly the conversations with the functional bodies around, they have to make a similar decision to yourselves about the options. So I think the less risky option is to go with PSAA, because I guess ultimately have the overwhelming disadvantages of opting out.
Okay, so the dissenting voice in the room would have said, look, we could get a better deal if we can organise this, but that would have been outweighed by the voices saying that logistically we're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah, but I guess no one knows. It may well be there's a major retrenchment that even a London-only audit, it could have actually could that really have worked? A number of boroughs may not have wanted to opt out anyway. It's actually building a sufficient consensus. Alternatively, it could have been one of the proposals was that the boroughs could have opted out, but actually where would that leave the GLA and the group? So there was a whole set of, could we package up something that would be possible, or indeed whether there should be kind of 2 packages or even 3 packages of London-wide audits. So there was a lot of logistical issues about how could we bundle up a procurement, and then how would we then go and procure in time.
So there's that time element again. Okay. It's my job to have a swing, David. So.
No. As always, very good questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Harani.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to ask for the national scheme and opting in. Do we have some sort of input or oversight, or what are the transparency levels in terms of procurement from a national scheme? Just wary of kind of a lot of the question marks on other areas of government procurement that there are at the moment. So what kind of input do we have, or oversight do we have on that procurement process?
We've lobbied very strongly with PSAA to ensure that London's interests are sufficiently secured. So at the moment we have, by and large, a kind of symmetry of the same auditor auditing parts of the group, and looking to ensure that London's interests are defended better. Now, whether PSAA are really going to take that on board sufficiently remains to be seen. Similarly, the issue about quality, PSAA have very much looked to try and ensure audit quality is central to their procurement decisions, and indeed they've upped the quality percentage as part of the appraisal process they will go through in awarding contracts to auditors. Now, we have stressed that by quality we mean timeliness, because everybody's experiencing the same problem we described about late approvals. So hopefully PSA would have taken that on as part of their procurement and actually have defined quality in particular to ensure that we press external auditors to be able to deliver on time. My worry is that despite the best will in the world in PSAA, there may not be sufficient time and resources from the external audit companies to genuinely deliver that with the level of regulation and reporting they need to ensure happens.
And what about the actual scoring of the bids that come in, or what they're asking of people who potentially want to win the contract?
I mean, I think we can be assured that PSA will go through a very rigorous process in a way that one of the problems about creating our own procurement processes, whether that would be sufficiently rigorous, because PSA have obviously done it before. They have ensured in the first round of awards that the companies are sufficiently resourced and sufficiently professional to ensure the audits are can be genuinely awarded to them in a way that some of the other public audit process, I'm thinking particularly of educational trusts, where there have been problems, for instance, of auditors being appointed to audit some of the multi-academy trusts. So I think we can be assured that PSA will do a good job around that regulatory side of the business. I think the problem is whether the market can actually come back up with the answer that we need.
Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you. Can I ask the panel to give any views on the invitation to opt into the PSAA appointment process, noting that a decision needs to be made jointly by the Mayor and the Assembly before the 11th of March 2022. And I note that we've got our next meeting on the 9th of March, so the decision will be made, will it, on that date?
Well, that's why I was very keen to get your views, informally or formally, to be able to influence, because obviously I need to work with your colleagues in the Secretariat around the timing of when it would go to an Assembly plenary. Perhaps I would be looking for a plenary that would work, obviously, before the 11th of March. It might mean we have to push that into February, but I'll obviously work with your colleagues on working out what's the best time frame that would work for an Assembly plenary to consider this as a formal decision.
Okay, well, perhaps colleagues will have a word. I think we have to take your advice on this. So I would say, have we got, we've got agreement here. But as I say, just with the caveat that I have been very vexed by their lateness, and that as long as we have still got the ability to have a go at them about things like that, then...
I'm sure you will always hold them to account here, Chairman.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. Good. Okay. Thank you. So I think you've got steer, which is what you wanted. Right. We're now moving on to monitoring of expenses and taxable benefits for the mayor elected members and senior staff. David Galley, I don't know if you want to say anything about this.
I've nothing to add to the reports you've got,
No,
Chair.
we've read the reports. Have any of my colleagues got anything to say? No. Okay. Can I ask the panel to note the taxable benefits and expenses incurred by the Mayor, London Assembly members and senior staff? So we're now on to work programme. Do members have any questions or comments on the work programme? Right, good. We'll quit while we're ahead. Can I ask the panel then to note the
Chairman,
work?
sorry, can I just say,
Oh.
what I was keen to do for your next meeting is that we're finalising with EY their value for money reports, which would be an important document for your panel to consider. So I'd look to bring that to your next meeting.
Good. We're going to have a very long meeting, aren't we? Good. No, very good. Okay, thank you for that then, definitely. Can I ask the panel to note the work programme with the addition of what Mr. Galley's just told us. Right, so that brings us now to the next scheduled meeting of the audit panel will take place at 2 p.m. on Wednesday the 9th of March 2022. There's no any other urgent business, and therefore I now call the meeting to a close. Thank you.